There are now 150 symptoms that have been directly linked to perimenopause. And it's not just happening in the sex organs. Over half of the changes are happening in our brains. So that could be brain fog, that could be feeling tired, that could be all of these other things, that memory lapse, forgetting words. There's a feeling like you feel like bugs are crawling on you. That's a perimenopause symptom. Like, the list is outrageous, like everything that they've now started to connect to these changing in hormones. I think where it feels like a breakdown for women is when they don't understand what's going on, and so they feel crazy, right? Like, they're like, this doesn't make sense. I've talked to my doctor. They told me, because a lot of times I hear this from our users all the time, is they're like, I'm too young to be in perimenopause. Let's put some like words to what all this stuff means. So menarche is when you have your first period. That's your onset, like after puberty, and you get your first period. And then I don't know why they call it this, but then they call it pre-menopause. So that's just like your normal fertile life, where you're in like a predictable menstrual cycle. And then when your hormones start to get wonky again, that's called perimenopause. So that's like your puberty in reverse. And that can take 15 to 20 years. And because we don't maintain our fertility for our entire lives, whereas like men still theoretically could be fertile for their entire life, there's really this like reclamation in the second half of our life where we're like taking all of the skills we learned, and instead of putting that energy into making more people, we put it towards like, it comes back to our own heart, and you're like, what is the thing that's really important to me? What do I care about in the world? And then women go out and like kind of march that vision into place. So anything that no longer fits in that vision won't make it into the second half. And by 2030, there's going to be 1 billion women on the planet that are either in menopause or perimenopause. So 1 out of every 8 people on the planet will be in a category of perimenopause or menopause. So it's something like deeply important that we all start to understand what the frack is going on.
Welcome back to Plant Fueled. As always, I'm Callum Weir. Today's episode is one of those conversations that hits on something we don't talk about enough, or when we do, it's usually whispered, simplified, or brushed off as just hormones. We're talking about the menopause and the many shades of it. From perimenopause to now what's being called the Meno-Divorce. A rising trend in relationships breaking down during this transition. There's a lot happening beneath the surface that deserves more honesty, more nuance, and more science-backed conversation. My guest today is Alyx Coble-Frakes, coach, educator, and mind behind the agenda. Alyx helps women and menstruators understand their cycles as something more than just an inconvenience, as a rhythm, as a map, and even a mirror for how we live. We dive into how viewing your cycles like seasons can shift everything, from productivity to self-compassion. We talk about whether the moon can actually tell you anything about your cycle, and where that idea even came from. How perimenopause often feels like an internal awakening, rather than decline, and why this phase of life is calling for more respect, education, empowerment, and not more shame. If you've ever felt confused about your body, dismissed by the system, or just curious about what really happens at that stage of life, this conversation will probably meet you where you are, and challenge probably a few things you've learned along the way. And hey, if you've learned something new today, do me a favor, hit follow, drop a review, share it, give a star rating, whatever the platform you use allows you to do. It's cheaper than therapy, quicker than a hot flush, and genuinely helps the show reach more ears. Alright, let's dive in. Peace and plants. Alyx, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Same. Because I think in the last year or so on this podcast, actually, I would say I've been on kind of like a learning journey myself, unintentionally at first. Like, I was diving more into women's health, and from a guy's point of view, it's something that I will never experience, luckily. But I will and have been on the receiving end of it. And I would say that I knew very little, and in the grand scheme of things, I still know very little, but I have more of an insight into things. And, the more I've dived into things like, endometriosis, PCOS, menstruation, etc., learned a lot more. At least from my point of view, it seems like there's more of an emphasis on this subject than ever before. I could be wrong, but I think things are changing, things are progressing. People finally kind of looking to take control of themselves and actually being seen as a woman instead of seen as a woman at a certain age with hot flushes and a temper tantrum.
Yeah, I would agree. I think things are changing, and I think things are changing because in an attempt, this is kind of like my hypothesis, to go with me, in an attempt for women to have more of that control in the workforce. Around 50 years ago, birth control was introduced, and women ever since then have been on hormonal birth control for a long time, right? Like, it's been really common for women in our age demographic to have been on hormonal birth control for 10 to 15 years. And so we see all of that with all of the environmental impacts. And then when women are finally getting off of birth control to have children, they're experiencing high rates, higher than ever before in human history, of fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, all of these conditions getting exacerbated by our poor food quality, the shit in our products, and overall just like these bad, or like the reduction in like symptom tracking for women, because doctors have just been putting people on hormonal birth control for a really long time. And now we're kind of in a shit storm. Like, we are in this perfect storm of all of these conflicting factors around the globe, and women are like, holy crap, like I am unwell right now, like help, please help me, what the hell's going on with my body? And we're seeing this particularly like as women are going through midlife, and women haven't for a long time had the resources to HRT or some of those other supportive systems like men have had, because there was a pretty bad scare in the 80s around some of these hormone replacement therapies. And because of that, we kind of just like swung the other direction to not offering women any kind of support at all. And so women are just like out here searching on Instagram trying to figure out how to stop their hot flashes in the middle of the night, right? So it's kind of this perfect storm that's existing right now. And so it feels like a really fun, exciting time to be working in women's health, even though it's kind of a complete disaster at the moment.
Yeah, because I I really resonate with everything. Like, especially like just seeing the shit show that the world has been in the last kind of like 10 years, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to women's health, because obviously there's not much data or science on. Because we would rather research male pattern boarding than we would actually female like things, and
There's like more money spent on ED medicine than on endometriosis, and 1 in 10 women on the planet is assumed to have endometriosis. And yet still more money is going into like libido medication for men than this condition that is like horrifically painful for women. And they're like, it's fine, just take some more ibuprofen. Like, what? What's
yeah, it is wild. But it is nice
Yeah.
to see that there is some like there's more awareness these days, and I think I've become more aware of it
Yeah.
after, like, I would say maybe 10, 15 years, with the rise of kind of like applications and apps on your phone, that there seems to be like
Yeah.
cycle apps. And at first I thought they were just mental. I didn't realize you could actually kind of like track anything, but also I was young and naive. But like, there is so much more awareness these days than there
Yeah.
was when my mom was tiny. Because I doubt if I went
Totally.
to my mom and told her there was 4 different phases of like the cycle, that she'd have any idea.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think women a long time ago used to know this. And then as the world industrialized and we went to more of like that allopathic medical system, women stopped passing that information down to each other because they're like, oh, we'll just go to the doctor. That makes the most sense. This feels really logical. And like, as that was really great for a lot of medical interventions and improvements in maternal health care and different things of that nature. And we kind of lost some of this wisdom that used to get passed down from our grandmas, because even my grandma, by the time my grandma was born, it was already getting lost. Like, her mom didn't teach her about these things, right? So we're now 5 to 6 generations out where the wisdom that women used to share with each other has not been passed down. And so we're seeing this like reclaiming moment, I think, happening because of the internet, that women are like, wait, hey, it doesn't have to be like this. Like, can we talk to each other about this? So we're starting to kind of see the community come back. But it's going to take a while to rebuild those systems where women can actually get the care that they need. So one of the things that's so helpful is having men talk about this topic. So I'm really, really glad that you decided to host me for your podcast. This really helps. This really matters. It really helps expand the conversation when men start to become active participants of figuring out this solution with us. So thank you so much.
No, I thank you so much for acknowledging it. I guess I feel, because like I guess with a lot of guys, and we do kind of overthink things. We do kind of overlook things a lot of the time. And I know I have in the past, like, when someone's been like, oh, I'm on my period, and we're like, oh, just a bit of pain, he'll get over it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I think that's still kind of seen as how it is a lot of the time. Obviously, like,
Yeah.
you look at like things that are happening within the government, and they're kind of like, periods don't matter, you can just kind of not have those and things like that. So I'm guessing like there's a time and a place for conversations, and I think there's a time, and I think that time is now, where health is escalating. People are getting sicker, people are getting unhealthier, people are being in more pain, people are being more diagnosed with all sorts of things, but nobody's really having those kind of conversations. So it's kind of giving awareness, I guess, because if the guys don't know anything, then like there's no real support for the woman that's going to be in their life.
Exactly. And when we still just like the truth is the truth, like still the majority of governments around the world are ran by men, a majority of business owners, even a majority of like when we look at in the United States is like we're trying to get people to stock free period products in the bathroom, and majority of people doing purchase orders are men. And so if they don't understand why it's important to have free period products, they're just not going to put them in public restrooms because they don't need them. Right. So really, this is super duper vital that men get involved in the conversation in whatever ways that they can, because men are still majority of control on the planet. And so we need guys to come help us out. We're like, hey, help us get some period products, like help us get healthy. So I love what you're doing and that you're platforming this conversation. That's really important.
Thank you so much. Why do you think it has been so lost over time? Because if you go back like a few, well, not even 100 years ago, maybe a few years more than that, obviously there was this information for people. But however, it's slowly getting lost. Is that just due to like, the medical system and like, things being taken over by like, I don't like to say quote unquote big pharma, but big pharma.
But also big pharma. Yeah. So like what we kind of saw in the US at least is around 100 years ago, like early in the 1900s. So like maybe 125 years ago ish, around that time frame. This was the first time that the American Gynecological Association like got together, and they did not like midwives practicing midwifery. So they had a concerted effort to lobby the United States government to make midwifery illegal, and it was pretty successful across the entire United States. So it made it illegal for women to practice midwifery. And, maybe we can say they had pure intentions. Their intention was they wanted to get people to come into a hospital. But when they started doing that, that's when we saw these practices. Like in the beginning, they would like put women under anesthesia and like push the baby out of them, so they weren't even awake for labor. And like that's not what the body is supposed to do. Women are supposed to be like a part of that process. But in order to make it like, they kind of followed the same pattern of the Industrial Revolution, so they patterned hospitals pretty consistently after like what factories looked like. So like we get them in, we push the baby out, we get them out, send them home within 24 hours. And then around like we're like, what? Like birth is a super traumatic event. It does a lot to your hormones. But we just kind of saw this like concerted effort to consolidate. And maybe the intention was pure to consolidate and keep a healthier population. But whatever the intention was, what it does was it ripped a lot of that wisdom away from the hands of women who had been passing that on to each other, and put it into kind of more like this sterile environment to like make it pretty and cleaned up and closed up, because birth is messy. Being a human is messy. Having a menstrual cycle can be messy. And so I think that because people were uncomfortable, their idea was just like shut it up and like not talk about it. And what the impact of that is, women and menstruators have been really left behind in their health. Like they didn't even show, this is like a crazy one. They didn't actually start to test period products with a liquid that was similar to menstrual flow until last year. So they're like, this will absorb this much liquid, but they were testing it with water, and like menstrual flow is a viscous liquid. So chemically that like it's not going to absorb the same way if you're not using a product that's similar in your testing. So that's why women were like leaking all over the place. Like they weren't even testing the products correctly that they were selling to us. And so we just kind of see the problem is like a big tangled up mess at this point. And I think there was like folks with good intentions trying to continue to industrialize the world, and women's health got really left behind in that entire paradigm.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they tried to optimize, but in that way, shape, and form, kind of unoptimized. I don't know if that's the word for it, but
Exactly.
they optimized
That's
by the fact that, in, out, charge money, whatever. However,
yes.
the basics really got lost.
Yeah. And it's same with like the menstrual cycle, right? Women have just been taught to push through it, to not talk about their period pain. And when the really crazy thing that I didn't believe until I started doing this myself is that what women actually need is if you slow down on the first couple days of your period and just like let it all clear out, you will have twice as much energy for the rest of the entire month, and you'll be twice as much as productive naturally by just allowing yourself those days of rest. But what with the attempt to make women more optimized and make them more like on a man's hormonal schedule, we really kind of screwed ourselves over on that one. Like, that is not how women's bodies work. That is not like this has been fine-tuned over hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, right? Like, we decided a menstrual cycle was the best way to do reproduction for some reason. I don't know. I wasn't there at the original planning party, but like, we have evolved to be this way. And so like, we work, like, when we understand that blueprint, women are powerhouses. When women are pretending to be on men's hormonal schedule, that's when we get worn out, increased rates of hormonal conditions, increased rates of adrenal fatigue, stress related disorders, and all of this really crappy stuff, just because we're not listening to the way that our natural blueprint is. So it's time to reclaim that shit. It's like time to go back to the drawing board and back to the way our bodies work naturally.
Yeah, which you'd think is how it should be in the first place. However, obviously, it's been lost along the way. How does somebody end up in this line of work? Like, if we take it back, because I feel like when I've spoken to people in these kind of fields, there seems to be some kind of origin story that kind of led them down this path. It's not just this kind of dream job or profession that a 12-year-old has.
Yeah, I would love to share the origin story because it's so funny. I never anticipated that I would end up here. So I have a degree in business, and then when I was done with business school, I went to the Peace Corps. So that's like a volunteer NGO. I lived in Peru for 2 years. I came back, I worked for a lot of nonprofits, and I really got interested in health and wellness. So in 2015, I started working with a health coaching company, and then I eventually opened up my own health coaching shop in 2018. And when I was tracking my sales, when I started my own company, I found that I had higher sales during the ovulation phase of my menstrual cycle. And I was like, what is that? Why am I making more money depending on when my sales calls were? Like, they did not teach me this in business school. They did not teach me to plan my life, my business with my period. I missed that section. Nope, just turns out they never talked about it in business school. So then I was like, I need to find something to corroborate my research. Otherwise, I'm going to feel crazy. And I found a study of exotic dancers. They split the women up into women on birth control and the women not on birth control. And the women who were not on birth control all made more money during ovulation, up to 30% more in tips than any other time of their cycle. And I was like, holy crap, this is a real thing. Like, women, our physiology changes. And now, like, what I've learned since then, estrogen has such a big impact on our mood, our physiology. So when the levels of estrogen change, our personality changes. Any woman you've lived with, you've gotten the benefit of having 4 girlfriends at once, right? Like, just depending on the phase of the cycle, you get a different woman throughout the month, right? So you get to keep up with 4 different people. How exciting for you, right?
I can resonate with that one.
So like, I found like, exactly, you're like, okay, who am I going on a date with today? And like, once you start planning like that, you're going to have better relationships. So I found like this really impacts the world of work. So I wanted to help other women simplify it and think like time blocking was really powerful and like kind of a big hot buzzy topic at that time. Like, block your hours and then do less work. And I was like, so that's kind of what we wanted to show women how to do with the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So our first product was actually a physical product. So we broke it into the 4 phases of the cycle, and we showed women what to work on. And then eventually all that translated into an app. But now I'm like down in the rabbit hole, so deeply down the rabbit hole of women's health that I like see all of the connections. The menstrual cycle impacts our relationship. It impacts parenting. It impacts how we show up at work. It impacts what happens when we ask for a raise, because all of these biochemicals give feedback to our brain and they impact our mood. It all is interconnected. So if a woman wants to be healthy, she's got to understand the 4 phases of the cycle.
It's mental to me that obviously during a certain time that you can go into a workplace and make more sales. So do you think if that knowledge was also given to the general public or businesses in general, that workplaces would actually evolve to kind of accommodate for that? Or are we still so far behind, decades behind, that it's just kind of like that's probably going to be seen as some woo-woo kind of shit just to kind of get off lightly?
think that we saw it actually happen in the pandemic. So in the United States, we saw that everyone anticipated work from home mandate would decrease productivity. And what we actually saw was an increase in productivity. And I have not, because again, they don't like to study women and their periods, but I'm just guessing, like, because I know for myself, I've been working from home since 2018. When I have bad period cramps, I can still work from bed, but I have a heating pad on and I've got my sweatpants on and I don't have to be like put together in the office. So when women have the flexibility in their schedules, they're able to get a lot more productive. And currently, I think people will still see it as too woo-woo, but right now women are losing approximately 10 days of productivity per year based on unsupported cycles, which is like on the lowest estimation $12 billion to the US economy. So if people liked money, they would start supporting women's menstrual cycles and allow a cyclical flexibility because they would make so much more money. So it's always like which will win out more, our true desire for money or misogyny? And like sometimes it just keeps seeming like misogyny keeps winning out over the love for money. I'm like, if we wanted to make more money, you would help women work with their period. But I digress.
Yeah, I feel like we're still so very far off that.
So far off, yeah.
Yeah. There's a term that you speak of a lot, which is the Meno-Divorce, which to me is a
Yeah.
brand new term, and I assume to a lot of people listening that this may be a brand new term to them as well. So what is the Meno-Divorce?
Meno-Divorce is this phenomenon that we're seeing. The first study actually came out of the UK. So thank y'all for that one. This was very helpful. So they showed like that women, we already kind of know women initiate the majority of divorces. I think it's estimated women initiate about 80% of divorces on the planet, roughly, depending on where you get that stat from. And then they're finding that about all of those divorces initiated by women, 70% of them is happening during perimenopause. Like, holy shit, most people are getting asked, most men are receiving divorce papers when their spouse is in perimenopause.
That's such a huge amount.
And
Wow.
it's so many. It's so, almost all of them are getting divorced in perimenopause, like the vast majority of divorces. I think it would help to, like, can I just give you like a breakdown of the 4 phases and then kind of explain how that starts to shift a little bit as we go through perimenopause?
Yeah,
Would that be
absolutely.
helpful?
Because there's guys that listen to this podcast that are probably so unaware of. I mean, to be
They're
fair,
like,
I know the cycles,
they're
but I
like,
don't know what
what?
the fuck they do.
Yeah. I think a lot of women are really late to this too, because like I was 27 when I started the agenda period, and I was like, everyone must know about this. Like, how did I get so late to the party? I showed up to the party, no one else was at the party. I'm like, oh shit, maybe I'm early to the party actually. So the four phases, like men, their hormones repeat every 24 hours. So men have a hormonal pattern that's like the sun. That's why it works really well for you guys. Like we're talking about like consistency, like do your workout every day. Like that works excellently for men. Men are fantastic at doing the same thing every day, which is why men will say like, I'm simple, like just like tell me what you want me to do and like I'll do the same thing tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, right? For every day after, because like your hormones help you do the same, like everything from yesterday gets washed away. Even if you had a shitty day, you wake up and boom, like you're back onto a new hormonal pattern. Like you kind of have that fresh start every day. Women's hormones are like the moon. It takes us 28 days to complete our hormonal cycle. So like something isn't just going to wash off our back probably until the next cycle starts. So that can make things a little bit more complicated. So the women have 4 phases of their cycle. So the first phase is our menstrual phase. So this is the first day when you need a period product. This is our inner winter time if you're trying to start to understand. So the woman in your life, or if you're a woman listening to this, think about how you like to take care of yourself when it's winter. You may be more hibernation, a little bit more quiet, eating those foods that like warm up the body, and really you want to have that time to rest and relax. And we talk about this as our time for planning. So actually sitting down and looking at the next month ahead and kind of figuring out what you're going to have energy for. The next phase is the follicular phase. This is when your estrogen is on the rise. So the woman in your life is going to be like, oh my God, let's go do something. Like, let's go do something new. Like this is the busy bee energy. Like our estrogen's up, follicle stimulating hormones up. And this is again, like our inner springtime. So if you made a plan during your period, this is the time to go start working on your plan. So this is a great time to take her out on a new date, to get her excited to go try something new. Like this is a great time to be working with those hormones that are already going on. Then the next phase is ovulation. This is when I was making more money. This is our inner summertime. So we have a heightened estrogen, heightened testosterone, high libido during this phase of the cycle. So pay attention. This is a great time to like ask for a raise, or women listening, get your husband to plan that vacation he's been avoiding. Be like, babe, it's a great time to book it. Like, let's go to Greece next year, right? Like, lock him in during ovulation. You're harder to say no to. Men, if she's really giving you the full court press and you want to say yes to everything she's saying, she's probably ovulating. So just think about that. And then the last phase is the luteal phase. So this is our inner autumn time. So this is when we're really good at being analytical, organizing, wrapping up projects, and kind of like taking everything we did during this cycle and making sure it goes through a completion phase. So when we think about that, those are really different skill sets throughout the month. Those are really different things that our body is energetically and hormonally calling us to do, versus like men are doing like the same thing every day. And so neither of them is right or wrong. We just start to see we've got a huge hormonal mismatch that's happening when men and women don't understand. So let's see if this has ever happened to you, because I've talked to a lot of men this has happened to. Like, you'll plan a date, you go out, it goes smashingly. She's like, best time ever. This is the best date I've ever been on. You're like, I'm locking that in. We got another date night 2 weeks from now. I'm doing the same thing 2.0. She's going to love it. It was so good last time. Well, last time she was in the follicular phase and you took her out dancing, and now she's in the luteal phase and all she wants to do is eat chocolate, and you just took her out to the dance club. She's going to be pissed off at you. Be like, why don't you understand me? Why did you take me dancing? I don't want to do this right now. You're like making a huge fight. I can tell by the laughter, like something similar has happened.
Very similar, yeah.
And it's all because of that mismatch, because the first time it went really well because she was prepped to do that, and now she's not prepped to do that. So this is where we see all these conflict cycles happening. And I think this is really what is leading to the perimenopause divorce conversation, right? So in the first half of the cycle that I was talking about, women have very pro-social hormones because they want to get pregnant. This is biologically happening. Estrogen is a pro-social hormone. This is just biologically true. Even if this woman in front of you doesn't want to get pregnant, her body wants to get pregnant, because that's what we're all here to do, people, is make babies. I'm sorry, that's just what it is on this planet. Everyone here is trying to make more babies. So your body wants to get pregnant in the first half. And then in the luteal phase, you move into a pro-self orientation because your body is trying to stay pregnant. So your body is very protective of itself because it's trying to maintain a potential pregnancy. Even if there's no chance you could get pregnant, this is what the hormones are telling your brain. So then when you get into perimenopause, women, what happens is first they get their periods closer together, and then they get them longer and longer apart. So they're spending more time in a pro-self orientation. So if the man in your life, you've been asking him to change, you've been asking him to help out, you've been being really clear about, like, we still know the division of labor, insane. Women are doing 75% of unpaid household labor around the world. So if you keep asking this person, yo, hey, I need some help. Hey, this is changing for me. Hey, yo, bud, get it together. And you're spending more and more time inward towards yourself at the things that are and are not working in your life. If that man doesn't change and doesn't help out anything that you're asking about, that is why we're seeing, in my opinion, the rates of divorce go through the roof in perimenopause, because women now have the financial flexibility to live on their own. Like, if you're not bringing something to the table beyond a paycheck, because I'm also bringing a paycheck, then I would just rather do this by myself. And so we're seeing this kind of clash of this, what I really think is just a hormonal misunderstanding during perimenopause. And it's devastating marriages around the world.
These 70% of divorces through Meno-Divorce, is this worldwide, or is it just gotten more in like Western civilizations, like the first world countries, so on so?
They're definitely, I think, seeing it primarily. Divorce is not as easy around the world, but I think we're definitely seeing that in those countries, like in Europe, in the United States, in Canada. That's where a majority of the data is coming from. And I think we can see a similar pattern as women, because like today, like 2025 marks the 50-year mark that women can open up their own credit card in the United States. Like, for most of the United States, women couldn't even open up their own like bank account. And so as women in other countries begin to get similar opportunities for financial freedom and flexibility, I think we'll see a similar pattern in the next 10 to 20 years if we don't start to shift into more of a place of understanding each other. Because I think both men and women really want to be in awesome committed partnerships with each other. We're really missing each other right now.
Hmm. I can only assume that there's like triggers that definitely set this off. Like there's something that's probably pent up that's being released in these things that in these relationships that are kind of they were easier to ignore at one point, and I'm guessing hormones amplify what's kind of already there, like the cracks that were small but then becoming
Yes.
very kind of impossible to ignore.
Yeah, I think I'm writing that down because I love it. I think that's a great framing. So for me, I can talk about myself. So I was married. I've already been divorced. We love a mid-30s divorcee, like that's how exciting for me. But what really happened is that division of labor was always unequal. And it didn't matter as much until we had kids because it was like the crack was there, but I wasn't really seeing it, right? Like I was like, oh, whatever, it's not a big deal. We both traveled a lot for work, so whatever, I'm home right now, I'll just take care of this. Then I got pregnant with twins spontaneously. So
Mm.
I was like, I was ready to be a mom and I got two on the first go. And then that created this like pressure cooker situation because kids require so much additional work. Even one kid. And I had twins and I was still trying to build a company. And I was like, yo, hello, over here, guy. Like, this is not working for me. I am doing too much shit. And because of that, because I was carrying too much, my health into the toilet. Women have these huge hormonal spikes around postpartum and also during perimenopause where their health can be really hard to manage. And so I went through this huge postpartum crash and ended up gaining 75 pounds. I've never been that heavy in my entire life. And like you could just see my face was round because of cortisol. Like I just was like puffy everywhere. I didn't have the time to work out. My ex-husband was on a military rotation, so he was gone for 9 months. When my kids were 18 months old, he came back and I said, look, bud, my life was easier when you were out of the country. Like, let that sink in because like I am just cleaning up after you all of the time. So please do something different. And he's like, no, thank you. And I had those conversations for about a year. And then I filed for divorce. He's like, oh my God, the divorce came out of nowhere. I was like, what? What do you mean it came out of nowhere? I asked you, I told you. And so I think, and then he was like, you shouldn't watch TikTok so much. That's bad for your brain. I'm like, no, TikTok helped me understand what was going on. Like it gave me, he's like, you know what the problem is here? You need to delete TikTok. I'm like, I don't think that's the problem.
Yeah, TikTok causes brain rot, but like not that much.
Not that much. So yeah, no, I think we're in this place where, and like culturally, it just we're used to acting in a certain way, and it's not working for women, and it's not really working for men either. Like men are getting like in dangerous jobs. They're tired. Everyone's just tired. And then instead of fighting the system and the structure that's keeping everyone on our planet sick, we just keep fighting each other. And that is not the way to like move away from the perimenopause divorce crisis. I really think that the antidote here is understanding each other so that women and men can come back into true community with one another.
Mm. Why is it that you think so many women find their voice during this phase? Like, is it the hormones? Is it the emotional side of thing, or is it just kind of like decades of I'm guessing people pleasing and kind of running out of fuel? Because as you said, it's very much people pleasing when you know kind of ignoring a situation.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely like we have been having decades of people pleasing. And then we get to that point where we are not having so much of we have less estrogen, right? The pro-social hormone. We get back into the place where we're more focused on ourselves. And then we're finally like, what the fuck am I doing here? I am keeping everyone else warm by lighting myself on fire, and I don't have anything left. My health is completely in the shitter. Like we're seeing obesity rates go through the roof in the United States. Like women have the result of people pleasing and doing something for everyone else is leaving women in a horrendous health paradigm where they're worn out, tapped out, and exhausted. And so that shift towards a more pro self orientation is letting women know this needs to change or you won't survive this phase of your life. Like I felt like I was like the life force was getting drained out of me day by day, right? Like I was like I have nothing left. I'm not even eating. I feel like I'm not even eating any food and I'm still super fat because my stress is through the roof. My cortisol is through the roof. I don't have time to exercise. And so that perfect storm of years of not taking care of yourself, plus these hormones now that you have less estrogen, and it's making you turn inward and really reevaluate during this time of your life. How do I want the next 40 years of my life to look? What comes next for me? And can I survive it if I keep doing what I've been doing and I keep ignoring my own health? And I think a lot of women are finding that the answer to that question is no, they can't keep living in that way. And so I think I've heard really commonly from women is they will make that, just like I did, they'll make that invitation to their spouse, like, hey, this isn't working for me. Hey, can we shift things around? Like, can we do this differently? And the men who sign up for that journey stay married, and the men who refuse to sign up for that journey and alone, I guess, or they find some other woman who hasn't gone through perimenopause yet to start dating. So
I imagine it's terrifying because, like, your body's changing, and for the people that don't realize it, well, know it's going to come, but they don't realize it's probably because your identity's shifting, and then suddenly you're kind of like
yes.
questioning everything. But how realistically, how do you help people not mistake kind of an awakening for a breakdown? Because I feel like they can be seen as, the same thing when you're going through such a different period in your life.
I think where it feels like a breakdown for women is when they don't understand what's going on. And so they feel crazy, right? Like they're like, this doesn't make sense. I've talked to my doctor. They told me, because a lot of times I hear this from our users all the time, is they're like, I'm too young to be in perimenopause. And I'm babe, there's now saying that hormones start. So let's put some like words to what all this stuff means. So menarche is when you have your first period. That's your onset, like after puberty, and you get your first period. And then this is, I don't know why they call it this, but then they call it pre-menopause. So that's just like your normal fertile life where you're in like a predictable menstrual cycle. And then when your hormones start to get wonky again, that's called perimenopause. So that's like your puberty in reverse. And that can take 15 to 20 years for people to go through perimenopause. And menopause is a 1-day event, just like menarche is a 1-day event, which means you have not had a period for an entire calendar year, 365. And now, whoop, you're postmenopausal. So it's like a 1-day party. Like your menopause is like actually a 1-day celebration. And now you're postmenopausal, and women spend about 40% of their life on the other side of menopause. So when women don't understand what's going on, I think that's why it feels like they're breaking down. They feel crazy because it seems really random. There are now 150 symptoms that have been directly linked to perimenopause. And it's not just happening in the sex organs. Over half of the changes are happening in our brains. So that could be brain fog, that could be feeling tired, that could be all of these other things, that memory lapse, forgetting words. There's a feeling like you feel like bugs are crawling on you. That's a perimenopause symptom. Like the list is outrageous, like everything that they've now started to connect to these changing in hormones. So when women are empowered and recognize that the change is happening, they can seek symptomatic relief for themselves more quickly. And then they recognize, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm just going through perimenopause. I'm just going through puberty in reverse. And then they can make use and like they can have clarity around all of these different components. But when they don't know what's going on, it feels like insanity, right? Like it feels like they're losing their damn marbles.
Yeah, I expect.
So I think that's a big difference.
I guess as well that you have from sides of like when you do go to a doctor, and it could be a male doctor or somebody who doesn't really understand you, or your husband, you can kind of get gaslit into thinking that you might be crazy at the same time, because it's all well and good knowing
Absolutely.
your own body, but when you go to a doctor, it's kind of like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you or anything like that, or your husband or your partner's kind of like, oh, you're losing your memory, or like you said this but you didn't say it, and things like that, because that does happen as well. And I think people can feel
Yeah.
like at this time of life that they are going slightly insane.
Absolutely. I think that's really true. And I'm so glad that I have like built this company. So I already have started to track, like I'm having some perimenopausal symptoms. I'm having some hormonal changes already. They're really slight, but knowing it so early is the thing that's going to allow me to have a much healthier journey through perimenopause. So that's something that we would recommend for everybody, is that you should be tracking your menstrual cycle. Whenever you hear this podcast, start tracking it, even if it's already like kind of off the rails. when you start tracking your cycle, then you can get support for yourself, because you're right, doctors have like kind of a prescriptive checklist almost to look for. And so if you don't understand your own data and if you can't articulate that clearly, it'll be hard for you to get your support.
With obviously guys, we have it quite easy. Like, you go through this, we have a midlife crisis at most, where we, buy a car, get a tattoo, prove that we're still young. Whereas kind of when women do hit this, they kind of just start then burning down bits of their life that kind of never felt like it was theirs to begin with, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Women talk about that as like, there was a really good book from the UK called Second Spring. Should be a cool one for your podcast. Kate is awesome, but it really talks about like like women, because we don't maintain our fertility for our entire lives, whereas like men still theoretically could be fertile for their entire life. There's really this like reclamation in the second half of our life where we're like taking all of the skills we learned, and instead of putting that energy into making more people, we put it towards like, it comes back to our own heart, and you're like, what is the thing that's really important to me? What do I care about in the world? And then women go out and like kind of march that vision into place, so anything that no longer fits in that vision won't make it into the second half. It just won't, right? Like women are like, start pruning it, they start pruning it away, like what the things that aren't working for them in midlife. So this is a topic that, even if you don't live with a woman, this impacts every human on the planet, because we all interact with women. And by 2030, there's going to be 1 billion women on the planet that are either in menopause or perimenopause. So 1 out of every 8 people on the planet will be in a category of perimenopause or menopause. So it's something like deeply important that we all start to understand what the frack is going on with women in midlife, because I think so much of the destabilization comes from people, just like you were talking about, not understanding that this is a normal thing and not understanding how to stay healthy as they walk through it.
Would you say that kind of like, as you just mentioned, like, would you say that like menopause is kind of less about loss, but kind of more about liberation? Because I feel like it's very much you kind of, you've lost parts of you, you've got rid of things that you don't need anymore, and now you've got the second part of your life, and you're kind of like, hey, I've got whatever I can do with this. Like, I can, there could be a silver lining to this with people. You can, it's a phase to rebuild. Careers, health, relationships. Almost kind of like they finally got permission to kind of live for themselves. But obviously, why does it also take, like the menopause for that permission slip to kind of appear as well? That's the thing. So obviously, I'm guessing the hormones and everything else do help develop that.
Yeah, I would say that's probably partly why we don't like to show a lot of older women on television or movies, because we have this idea and this narrative that older women are like dried up and like gross and like hung out to dry, where like most women are going through menopause in their 50s, and I'm like, 50-year-old women are still hot. What are we talking about? Like, dudes get to stay hot in their 50s, but we have this cultural narrative that women aren't hot anymore and they're kind of not that important. And I think it is because women in their 50s are ballers. They are so like, they are unapologetic. They don't have time for your bullshit. They do not have time for anything that doesn't work for them. So like, from a society standpoint, it makes sense to like hide those women away, because we don't want them to radicalize young women into thinking that they can have this permission slip. So we're just like, oh, they're just like old hags and like they're not hot anymore. So like, that's actually part of my personal brand and mission, is to stay as hot as possible, like through menopause, to be like, and what? Yeah, I'm gonna like be a grandma who's like super hot. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, no, we are giving up this bullshit that like women are just like dried up, that they're not sexy, that they're not interested in sex, that they have no libido after menopause. None of that's true. None of that's true. And I think partly where some of that came from is when we give women a full hysterectomy as the only treatment for their menopausal symptoms, then we're taking away their sex hormones, and then they do typically have lower libido, because estrogen supports libido. It'd be like telling men we should castrate you to fix your hormonal health problems. Like, we would never tell men that. We would never be like, can I chop your balls off now to like fix your hormones? Be like, what? No, that's insane. Like, that's pretty freaking extreme, right? But we do that to women all the time. Is like the number one source of treatment for their menopausal symptoms is just like hack out all of their sex organs. Like, we don't do that to men. That would be an insane, like, your face shows me everything. Like, that would be insane if your doctor was like, Callum, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but your testosterone can't fix it. Time to chop your balls off. You'd be like, Excuse me? What? What? It would be a catastrophe. And yet women walk around all the time. They're like, oh, thank God I had a hysterectomy. I'm like, ma'am, what do you mean? Thank God you had a hysterectomy. Your sex life's going to be in the toilet. Like it can mess with your cervix. It can mess with all of these different things. So yeah, I really think we need some more treatments for women so that we're not having these extreme pendulum swings that are going on.
Yeah, because well, I knew hysterectomies were happening. Like, I didn't know to the extent of like that as kind of like that only option, that or like HRT. Um, However, yeah, when you put it in the fact of or the light of if I have my balls chopped off at like this age to like fix whatever, that's such a horrific thought that I think most men would like, cringe at. Like even you saying that made everything tighten inside me.
Like,
So
right? Like that would be like we would be like, that is so barbaric. What do you mean you're gonna just castrate him? Like, what are you talking about? And yet women are like lining up relieved to get all of their sex organs chopped out of their body because we like aren't making this connection with like how important, like we understand for men, we're like, oh, that's just testosterone, he's just like raging out because he's on, like we understand how much testosterone makes up a man's personality, how much it makes up their sex drive, how much it makes up like their muscle definition and the way your body looks. And yet we're not making that leap with like how important all of those sex hormones are for women's bodies and women's personalities and women's libido and women's sex drive. And that is why we're getting like really crappy options. So I just looked it up. There are 600,000 hysterectomies performed in the United States annually.
that's well, that
Just
sounds
chopping it out.
that's insane. That also sounds expensive for the States also. I've seen how much your
Yeah.
healthcare is, so that's like an expensive thing to do
Horrible.
that you don't
Horrible.
need to do.
Right. Yes. And so many women, they get to the point where they're like, they have been bleeding for months and they're like relieved to get there. I'm like, you should not be relieved. You did not get healthcare because real actual healthcare would have stopped you from getting to the point where your body was full of fibroids, where you had such horrendous endometriosis, right? But because we're missing the care funnel early on for women, we just keep giving them really extreme options to support their hormones that don't actually support their hormones working in the way that they're supposed to.
I'm guessing as well it's very much, you know, listening to your body, giving you feedback, and it's not
Yeah.
betraying you because, some of my clients hit perimenopause and say like
Yes.
my body's betraying me, but really it's just communicating and, louder than probably ever before. But the
Yeah.
interesting bit is it's not kind of how to fix it, it's just how to listen to it. And there's probably telltale signs that it's kind of like, listen to me, but people are still ignoring.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we just don't know, like women, it just feels like such a still a black box and a taboo because there are so many women who have been shamed for their period that anything connected to it in the slightest kind of gives people the ick, and so they just would rather not talk about it. But I think we're finally starting to see a shift because people are so unwell. People are so deeply unwell. And the reason that women are so deeply unwell is because they're not living with their cyclical biology, because they're pushing through, they're ignoring their bodies, they're burnt out, they're exhausted, and they're getting a huge bill in perimenopause from all of the years that they spend ignoring their bodies. So like even like we can't keep eating like shit all the time and expect to be healthy. We can't keep ignoring going to the gym and expecting to be healthy. We can't spend 100 hours a day on screens and expect to be healthy. Human beings are not robots. And so when we keep pushing ourselves to show up as like robots, obviously the quality of our life and our health is going to like completely go down the drain. So I know this conversation has felt like, wow, there's a lot of shit wrong that's going on right now, and there definitely is. But I think that the secret for women is and for men is tracking and getting back to those simplest health tasks that we all know we need to do. We need to eat enough vegetables. No one is eating enough fiber in the United States. Like that's why colon cancer is on the rise, right? We're not drinking enough clean water. We're not getting enough movement. So when we look at that perimenopause question, the thing that helps us stay healthy in perimenopause is taking care of ourselves earlier on in life.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's why I was really thinking was that obviously what is it that most people can do to support their body through it? Is it just lifestyle? Is it nutrition? Is it rest? Is it having boundaries versus kind of like what's purely just hormonal? Like, because obviously we know there's things that we can do to ease that and alleviate things and make things better. But if we're going to eat like shit, and whether we're not going to go to gym, or you're going to laze around, and there's nothing wrong with lazing around, but you can't do that for the rest of your life. Like, you have to do things
Yeah.
to progress further on and help yourself.
Yeah, I think like people are always looking for the silver bullet of like, how can I just take a pill and make this go away? But the truth is that we know about humans, like, I don't know if you ever watched that Blue Zones documentary, but they
Mm.
showed all these pockets of the world with like the centennials, right? The people who are living to 100 years old. And the things that all of those people did: eat enough healthy fiber, move your body every single day, have a community of people who are like-minded to you, have purpose and intention in your life, eat well. Like, it's this: put sunshine on your face, drink a glass of water, move your ass, and eat food that doesn't make you feel like shit. And it really is that simple, and yet it feels complicated in a modern world that is pushing us to ignore ourselves all the time. We got to get more done. We got to get a few more things wrapped up, right? We're constantly pushing ourselves. And so humans really have got to take a step back and be like, it wasn't supposed to be like this. We're not supposed to be working for 40 hours a week at a computer. We have got to really reacclimate ourselves to a new health paradigm if we want to feel better in our lives.
Yeah, that's the thing though. It's when you say that, like, go out and like eat well, drink
It's
water, get sun
hard.
on your face and stuff. It's not as sexy as somebody getting their supplement stack that's named after a Greek goddess or something like that. That's very much,
Yeah,
it's
definitely
just
not
not
as sexy. Not as
yeah.
sexy.
Like, the thing is the basic simple stuff that is not sexy that works. It's the
Yeah.
boring things that people don't want to hear. It's very much, hey, you
Yeah.
just need to stick to the basics, which is, sleep, eat well, things that like Nan used to do basically, and that's why she lived forever. And
Yeah.
that's literally what it is.
See what I was saying about hot grandmas? Like, we all just need to have like our hot grandma mentality. And if we just think about like, how would I be a hot grandma and just start doing all of that now, like, that's a really good recipe for success, I think, for your life.
Well, it's weird because if you do look at, like, as you said earlier, if you look at Hollywood, if you look at the movies, if you look at a grandma these days looks about 40 in the movies. Um,
Yep.
like you're old and ragged at about 40, maybe 50 at late. It's very much
Yep.
pushed that, like, once you are past a certain age, that you are kind of, you're a bit done for, really, and you're just not kind of you're not too sought after.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think women have got to start questioning these narratives and really questioning, like, our generation, like, kind of questioning, what kind of life are we leaving behind on the planet? How do we want to feel? Because we just cannot keep doing the shit we've been doing and expect to be healthy. The math ain't mathing on that one. Like, people are unwell because we are not eating good food, we're not drinking enough water, and we're not moving our bodies. And so it's really is like, and then like the next step that we always talk about, especially for women, is that relationship piece, because bad relationships drive up your cortisol levels and make it almost impossible for you to be in a healthy body size. So really it's like that final piece of like considering who is around you and how is that going. But it's really about taking your health habits back one step at a time rather than waiting for some flashy thing to come and save you. We have to do those boring things in order to feel better as we age.
Mm. I guess it does get harder for people when they go to a doctor and not to be tossed to the side because, without data, a lot of the time people are kind of ignored if there's anything. Is
Yeah.
there something somebody should be doing to make sure that, when they do manage to get in front of a doctor, that they can get their points across? Because I know from a lot of the time the people that I spoke to that are going through various different things, whether that be endo, whether that be PCOS, whether that be menopause, a lot of the time you go into a doctor and they've got 15 minutes to talk to you, and then you just get kind of thrown to the side
Yeah.
because they don't understand what you're going through, or you don't have at least any kind of data points to give them.
Yeah, so I would say go in with as much of your own health data, become your own cycle scientist. So spend a couple of months tracking your symptoms and tracking when they're happening throughout the month. And then being able to have a really clear thing to articulate with your doctor and going in and saying, after the second day of my period, I'm experiencing this. Around ovulation, I'm experiencing this. And now my luteal phase is doing this. That was not happening before. And then ask them to run hormonal panels for you. Ask for those tests. And so then here's the thing, right? Like a lot of doctors will brush people off. So this is like the number one line that I use if my doctor doesn't do because you are the customer. You're paying the doctor to give you a service. And I think we forget that a lot of times. We're like, the doctor is the professional. Yeah, but I'm also like, he's my employee right now. I am paying him or her to attend me in this service. So if they're not doing their job, that's a big problem. So I always say, please write in my chart that you refuse to run the hormonal panel that I asked for. Please note that in my chart that you are refusing to run the hormonal panel that I asked for. So I was during my pregnancy, I was like, I really needed some pelvic floor support. And I was like, please write that in my chart that you're refusing to write me a referral for a pelvic floor specialist. And my doctor was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, no, like, I understand what my body needs. I understand that I need some additional pelvic floor support. And if you refuse to send me the referral, please notate that in my chart. Because what that does is if you have a more severe problem that pops up later, that sets that doctor up for a malpractice lawsuit. Because they did not do the thing that you asked for, and now you have cancer, and now you have this problem, and now you have to get a full hysterectomy. So what actually will really happen is every time I've ever used that line with the doctor, they just write me the referral or they run the lab that I was asking for, because it's a cover your ass moment for the doctor. But you have to be able to be very clear and articulate very directly, and that can be scary. I know that's scary for people, but just say, oh, please write in my chart that you're refusing to run the test that I'm asking for. And you'll see that should typically get the wheels moving a little bit. But you have to go in with your own understanding, because if you can't articulate what's going on to the doctor, they're not going to be able to help you. So that's where we always recommend people to start to track their cycle as the very first step before they go out and seek that medical care.
I mean, that's a great line. Like, I don't think I would have ever thought of that. Like, it's great. Like, because they don't want to be seen as doing anything wrong or having like malpractice. So, like, at least you're getting your point across. It's just getting that confidence to kind of go in there with that if they're not going to do it. And I know a lot of time, confidence does kind of play a big role in that. But if you can, work your way up to it and at least get your point across, and you're set. Or fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of this, like, we're waiting for somebody outside of us to save us. We're waiting for the government to get their head out of their ass. We're waiting for the allopathic medical system to study and research women. We're waiting for all of these things. And so a lot of people are just like living their lives and they're like, well, I don't want to be too much or ask for too much. Like, no, we have to start getting really clear that these organizations and these systems, we are their boss. We are the boss of our government. We're not acting like that right now. But like when people organize and get really crystal clear on what's not working for them, we can make a huge change. But average everyday people have to be willing to talk to each other, to push back against these oppressive systems and demand something better. Otherwise, our children are going to be more screwed than we are, right? Like they're going to have even less support than we have right now. So it really takes us coming together and demanding that we have those personal health supports, because we know it is killing all of us on this planet. Like we are collectively unwell because of our food system, because of big industry, because of big pharma. So it's time for us to come together as a community and be like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Like whatever your version of, please write that in my chart that you're refusing to run my panel that I asked for. Like do that everywhere. Do that everywhere. Do that to your government. Do that to the people in power, because like this is bullshit. We got to get together and get on the same team and decide we're not going to stand for subpar human living anymore, because it is making us all unwell.
Yeah, people aren't able to live their best lives at the moment, no matter how much they want to. Like, there's always some kind of restriction in the way, whether that be, medical, whether that be the food, or like, especially in places like the States, you've got food deserts. Like, that's not a normal thing people should be having. Like, people should have access to anything that's not noodles in a cup. But unfortunately, it's a fucked system.
I'm from rural Iowa, where we have some of the best farmland in the entire world. And the closest grocery store to me was 25 minutes away
That's insanity.
driving.
That is.
Insanity. So like my family always grew like we grew our own vegetables, and we had the privilege of having a car, but there's some people who lived like, I'm talking about like a shithole town like in the middle of nowhere, like 500 people. They finally put in a Dollar General. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like a convenience store with cup noodles, and like that's their answer to the food desert. And I'm just like, what? We literally have farmland all around us that could feed everybody that lives here, and instead you're putting up a Dollar General and making people drive 25 minutes away to get any real food.
Yeah, I've been to a few states in the United States where I've driven through and stopped off because I was hungry and went into like a dollar store, and there is nothing. There is nothing like
Nothing.
nutritionally healthy.
Nothing real food.
Yeah, it's all
No.
just kind of like factory made shit. And it's the same with
Yep.
like I lived in Australia for a bit, and it's the same there as well. Like you've got people that live in the outback. They do choose to live in the outback, but they are 400 kilometers from any store. And when it is a store, it's not like a store that's going to give you what you need. It's just kind of, I can pick up some crisps, I can pick up some potato chips, bits and
Yep.
pieces, and they're just kind of living. But I guess you can only be living as much as you physically can when you're in a system that doesn't allow you to.
Yeah. Yeah, so that like it's like power to the people, right? There are so many more people who are living like this than who are living at the very top of the system. So we can get together and stop fighting each other and be like, yo, this is bullshit. We don't want to do this anymore.
Mm.
So we can make a really big collective change, but it's just going to take people having these conversations.
If we move away from doctors and then go to partners, because obviously guys want smooth sailing, we wake up every day, we just want a new day. They don't want the arguments. They probably don't want the divorce because that's a lot more effort as well. What can the partners do to make it as smooth sailing as can be to help at least make choices that can benefit the both of them, for the person that's going through this?
Track her cycle together. Track it together. So one of the things we've made at the agenda period is we call it the marriage saver. So it's just like a window cling that goes on your mirror, and then there's a little arrow that points to what phase of the cycle that you're in, and it gives a tip for what you need during that phase of your cycle. So my current partner, like, he will plan road trips and like will plan everything around my cycle, because otherwise, like, if I'm in a bad part of my cycle, he's not going to want to go hang out with me like in the woods. Like, that would be terrible, right? So we really use my cycle as a family communication and planning tool, so that when we're going to any activity or any event, it's going to be as effective as possible. So men, start to track our cycle in a kind way. Like, don't be weird about it, but like, let her know, hey, I noticed this happens when your period's about to start, so I wanted to make you a really great salad today, right? I noticed this was going to happen. So kind of taking the work of understanding some of that mental load and that mental labor in order to work your entire system. Because if men are doing the same thing every day, it makes the most sense for men to accommodate to the schedule that is not the same every single day. Right? It's just the thing that's the most logical. Like, we know men's hormones do this. So you get the opportunity to work with the person who's like this, and then everyone will feel better because you're all speaking the same hormonal language. So that is really how we get out of conflict and back into harmony, is understanding that hormonal mismatch and then working so it's no longer feels mismatched.
How does that work for same-sex marriages? Like, if two females
For
are going
same-sex
through the
marriages,
same thing, like, are
they're
they?
probably like having a great time because they can just talk to each other about it. They're like, yo, bud, like, I need some more pads. Like, can you go pick those up for me? Like, those women are probably pretty happy in perimenopause. But yeah, and like, probably two men in a relationship, they're probably relieved they don't have to deal with this, but everyone else better go to school and start to help each other figure this out. Otherwise, we're all getting divorced and we're all going to be pissed off by Christmas time.
Yeah, but the only thought I had with that was, if two people were going through obviously the same thing at the same time, if they're around the same age, they probably have a good understanding of what's going on and can probably be more
Help each
open
other.
and talk about it more
Yeah.
than they would be with their partners that really won't understand because they will never go through it.
And I think men have an opportunity to do that too, because andropause starts for men about, they say like early 30s, like around 30, you start to lose about 1% of testosterone production every single year until you die. And this shows off typically as like the more extreme versions that we think of for men in midlife, right? Like you talked about buying the sports car, getting a young girlfriend, trying to feel alive. So if men were also talking about like if like being vulnerable about like, yeah, my body is changing. These things are different as I'm moving through my midlife as well. And having that space for vulnerability, I think men and women would both benefit from having those conversations together, because I have no idea what it feels like to start to lose your testosterone. Like, any thoughts? Have you noticed anything as you've aged, Callum?
I would say I've started to notice things, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I wasn't overly too sure if it was just, you've been having a rough few months. You haven't been on top of your exercise and your nutrition as much as you used to be, and then obviously putting that back into place, that you do see an elevation again. But yeah,
Yeah.
for me, I've not seen anything. I mean, after 30, 35, it's harder to put on as much muscle as possible. Or at
Yeah.
least defined muscle. So I've seen that, but I think, yeah, like I've come from a background of probably for the last 10 years of being relatively healthy as I can be. So I think that's
Hmm.
probably going to deteriorate later on in life than it would do for someone that's just kind of hasn't had that nutrition
Yeah.
background, hasn't had like the exercise background, hasn't had the background of other things. So yeah, there's things that I see that I'm certain. Um, Obviously with like muscle definition and things like that. However,
Yeah.
there's also people my age that I know that are suffering with that, and they've gone on to like
Yep.
testosterone treatment, but also that doesn't help the issue either. With a lot of these guys, because some of these things may actually just be sort your life out of it, and it might help.
Yeah, because I think HRT can kind of be the same way for women. Like it's kind of like that band-aid, similarly to how birth control can be a band-aid, right? Rather than understanding, humans evolved to go through these changes with in a healthy way. So you really need to sort out those lifestyle, dietary, those other issues underneath, and those things will support your healthy hormonal production and a healthy endocrine system for either men or women. So again, sorry guys, eat your vegetables and get off your ass. Like that's really what you have to do. I'm so sorry. You have to actually like do the boring shit that your grandma would do if you want to stay healthy as you age.
Yeah, luckily, you're speaking my language, because I think anybody that listens to this podcast knows that I'm very sarcastic in everything I do, and it is very much telling it how it is. So yes, get off your ass, eat your vegetables, stop bumming about, and get off your phone once in a while, and go do stuff,
Yeah.
because you need to. Like
Yes.
you haven't been put
Yeah.
like you haven't been put on this planet to literally do nothing and mope about. So at least if you're gonna you know mope about, at least do it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Totally.
You said earlier that obviously when you went through pregnancy, you put on quite a lot of weight, and I know for a lot of women, it is very much how do I, once they've gone through pregnancy or they are going through different areas of life, it does become slightly harder to lose weight or get rid of
Yeah.
weight, or like the motivation's not there sometimes. Like how was it that you managed to lose was it 75 pounds?
Yeah. So it was like like for the first year, I can't lie to you, of having twins, my head was just like, my head was down. I didn't think about anything. I'm like, it's pure survival mode, because like these small infants are waking up at random times of the day. I'm like, if I had one baby, I'd be asleep right now. But this damn second baby just woke up and now I'm awake again. And so then like, yeah, it was about when they were 2 years old. I looked at myself and I was like, I'm so tired. I want to be able to be around for these. I'm young too. Like I was, by the time they were two, I was like 32, 33, no, 32. And I was like, I want to be able to go to the park with them. I want to be able to do these things. And so luckily I had already built the Agenda Period. I had already built the Agenda Period app. So I understood that women's health, to really get to back to a place of health, women have to work with the menstrual cycle, because we need more calories during different times of the month. So during the luteal phase, you actually need about a 20% increase in calories, because your metabolism speeds up. So when women don't do that, they experience higher rates of binge eating and cravings, right? And like luckily I came from a health coaching world, so I understood all cravings are information. All symptoms your body is giving you is communication. So when your body spins off a symptom over and over again, month after month, it is pointing you back inward to a hormonal deficiency or a hormonal issue that you're having. So when I was like super overweight and I could just see it in my face, I was like, this is one, cortisol. Look at like how round everything just like bubbled out in my body. I'm like, so I'm having high rates of cortisol. So I knew, and also I was being, I wasn't being lazy. I was just exhausted with having two babies. So
As
I
you
was
would
not
be.
working out. I didn't work out for, yeah, I was like, I was losing my shit, man. So the first thing I did, I was like, I have to stop eating leftover chicken nuggets that my kids don't eat, because I'm like eating cold leftovers and like eating mindlessly throughout the day in a way that doesn't feel good for my body. So I did Whole30 first. And I needed to understand what is the food that at this age is working for me, because diets will always say, eat this, not that. But that shit they're telling you to eat may not work for your body, depending on how your body is. So you have to understand your own hormonal baseline and your own nutrition baseline, the stuff that you really need. So I did a round of Whole30. I realized gluten was making me feel very sick. So I cut out gluten from my diet completely and really reduced sugar. And then I started moving 20 minutes a day. And so I just did that. I literally would just walk laps around my house at first. Like at the top floor of my house, I was like listening to a podcast, and I made myself walk for at least 20 minutes a day. And then I started getting back into the gym. And then I started, like, it was all super incremental, and it happened over a couple of years. But I used my hormones and my menstrual cycle as a baseline for understanding how I needed to change my diet and exercise as I moved throughout the cycle. And then the health, and then this, like the last piece that we really find for women is why we talk about movement, what you put in your body, and then your relationship ecosystem. The healthier I got, the less interested my ex-husband was like hanging out with me. Like it really made him pull away from the relationship, because I was no longer people pleasing. I was like, hey, I don't have time to do all this shit for you anymore, because I got to take care of my own health. And so the less that I would do for him, the less like he was less interested in me, the healthier that I got. And women find that to be kind of a common experience. And so at that point, it was just like, yeah, well, I can't both be healthy and be married to you. So I'm going to pick to be healthy. So it was really this thing of like getting my food back in order, getting my movement back in order, and then really having a relationship audit to see what relationships were working for me and what relationships were not working for me. And so then again, I just happened to have mine a little bit earlier, because most of my friends are in perimenopause. So they all survived their divorces and like had a glow up. And I was like, if this man is going to be shitty for the next 10 years, why do I have to give him my next 10 hot years? And he's still not going to change. Let me just keep this shit moving right now. So luckily I had some older friends that helped me move through that process. But that's what it took, is really understanding how to support my hormones again, because the crash that happens in our brain when we become moms is tremendous. It actually changes your brain chemistry. You're not the same person after you give birth. And this is another thing that men can't really understand, because it's not going to happen to them. So it just like, it literally changes you at the biochemical level when you give birth, and you'll never be the same person again, which is kind of cool and also super weird. But like, luckily I had the background in order to understand how to come back to myself. And so that's something that we're really inspired to keep doing for other women, is showing them how to come back to themselves, because any single diet plan, any workout routine that does not include your menstrual cycle will not work for women long term. And that's why we're seeing women are choosing GLP-1s over going to the gym, because they just don't understand why they're not getting the results. And they're not getting the results because they're ignoring their menstrual cycle.
Yeah, GLP-1s are a huge thing at the moment, mainly because people are so lost. But I completely I resonate so much with the fact that when you become healthier, the partner, it becomes more of a toxic relationship, because it then it elevates the fact that they don't actually care about your health. They just care about maybe the benefits they may have been getting from you, to the point that it's kind of, once you start to get healthier and you kind of show their flaws, if anything, that you realize that this whole relationship doesn't really work because you don't care about the outcome.
Yeah. And it was like devastating. I thought like my ex-husband was like in the military, and he's like a really healthy guy, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, like we're gonna like work out together. And that never happened. And like it made him like less interested in me the healthier that I got. And so I was like, well, that's very strange. I will no longer be participating in that, thank you so much. Yeah, but I think that's when whoever's listening to this, if the people in your life don't care about your physical health, that's definitely like time to reconsider, are those relationships that you want to keep having take up a lot of priority in your life. Because if we do not have our physical health, it doesn't matter how smart you are or how rich you are. If you don't have your health, you can't do anything.
Hmm.
Like it is the thing that is the most important to me in my life, like underlying all of our humanness, because when we are unwell, we can't do the work we want to do in the world. So it's really something everyone has got to be prioritizing.
Yeah, it's if somebody doesn't care about your health, no matter who it is, whether that's a friend, family member, anyone that's in your life, it's a huge red flag. Like you should always
Definitely.
no matter if you're not getting on with somebody, like you should always care about their health no matter what. Like, and you should be caring about your own health.
Yeah.
Like, fuck everybody else's opinions, care
Yep.
about your own.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we'd say to women, just like start tracking your cycle. And like there's recommendations for how you should work out with the phases of your cycle, because there's just it's complicated. We could do a whole other episode on it, but like your body needs different kinds of movement throughout the phases of the cycle. So start tapping into your cyclical wisdom and let your menstrual cycle guide you
Hmm.
for reclaiming your health.
I heard you mention before when I was doing my research on moon phases, and yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people do assume is very woo woo. Is very much kind of aligned with all the different kind of like works you can get done, whether that be like like manifestation or shadow work or dark work and things like that.
Yeah.
And moon phases does come underneath that, and it is one of those things that I do take the piss out of, but also believe. But it's an easy jab for me to get views of videos.
So like kind of the theory behind that is that before there was non-natural light, women were all cycling with the moon, because they're like, we didn't have electricity, right? We didn't have lights at night. And so the idea was that, and like, so then if you don't have your period or you're in menopause, but you want something to track the new moon, so when the moon is dark in the sky, that's like your period time, right? Think of that as like the lowest energy point on the planet. And then as we move to the full moon, everyone gets crazy. Why? Because in the past, everyone could get pregnant during ovulation. Like think of like the full moon as like the egg popping out like during the cycle. So all the men were like, hey, everyone around me can get knocked up right now. Let's freaking go. So like that's why you see still high rates in the ER, like accidents that are happening. People go crazy during the full moon. And that's because it's subconsciously men know, everyone, they're like, it's a moving target. Everyone around me can get pregnant. Let's freaking go, bud. Let's make some babies. Because humans are animals that all want to make babies, right? Even if our human brains don't want to. And so that can be like, that's like the ovulation time. So if you don't have your cycle, again, your like period would start on the new moon. And then as you go through ovulation, that's when you're going to feel the heightened peak of your energy. And then down the other side is when we feel that energy coming back down again. So yes, it is one that can cause some giggles, but I think it's a great one for people to have in their back pocket. And like, I can tell by, it's true. Men all get weird as hell on the full moon. And
Oh
now
yeah,
you know why. It's because they know everyone around them can get pregnant. And so we're just little animals at the end of the day,
yeah.
trying to survive out
We
here.
have our instincts.
We have our animal instincts. Exactly. That's what's going on.
So, if you could rewrite, the menopause story, because it comes from such a negative place a lot of the time for women. So, for people listening right now, like, how would you reframe it if you could? Because I think so many people really think of it as such a negative, 20 years. Whereas if we reframe it, there's so much more to it.
I would say your menstrual cycle is your superpower, no matter what phase of your life you're in. And so that even applies as you're going in through menopause. You're still going to have a cycle. It'll just be lower levels of those hormones in fluctuation, but really understanding that you get to have 4 different unique parts of your personality that shine throughout the month. And then as you go through menopause, the reason you go through menopause is because there's more to the story here. That is what I truly believe about menopause. Women are one of 5 species on the planet that go through a menopause in all of the animal kingdom. And it is not because our only job is to have kids. It is because we've got so much wisdom that our body wants us to pass on after we're done having kids, that it would be too biologically confusing to allow us to keep reproducing, because we are supposed to shift into an orientation of wisdom keepers and of community movers. Women are supposed to be making moves out in the world and using all of the ways that our brain connects information to better our community. And so you are not getting dried up or sucked out when you go through menopause. It is your second awakening, and it is a time to own whatever's on your heart. It is a time to do that work in the world with clear intention and without the burden, because I'm going to say it like this, without the burden of reproduction, because it is a tremendous physiological burden on women's bodies to make more people. Holy shit, that is hard. That is really, really hard to do that. As someone who proudly did it twice at the same time, like I was like, I wonder if I'm making kidneys right now. Like, are we working on the brainstem today? What's happening? I don't know. My body's magical. It is making people right now, two people at the same time. And it is a tremendous burden to our system. And so that is why women get a break and we get a second chance at really coming into owning our most powerful and potent work in the world. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking they're shitty because they go through menopause. I want you to remember how powerful you are, because your body had an intention for you beyond reproduction.
I think that was so beautifully put. I think myself, I've learned so much from this conversation as well. I think, a real good takeaway from it is that maybe like menopause isn't really an ending. It's more of a graduation, I would say. That
Hell
you've
yeah.
kind of done the lessons, you kind of survived the chaos, and now you're finally getting to live kind of unapologetically.
Yes. We are like, and really, like, when women can own that and can love that, they realize how much they get a lot of energy back. We get a lot of our potency back, because like we're not so scrambled eggs trying to like make little people. We're really back to doing our big bold work in the world. And that's why it's like it was something like 80% of the women on Forbes list of like most prominent careers are 50 and older. 80%, because so much of our time in that middle chunk of our life is pouring into our children, that we really get that chance to come reclaim it for ourselves post menopause.
Alyx, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. For the people that want to know more, want to kind of find out more, want to, download the app, want to just find out more about the agenda, where do people go to find you? How do people come to work with you?
Come check us out at theagendaperiod.com. That is a clearinghouse for all the stuff we do. You can find out about the app. You can see other podcasts that we've done. This one will be there soon, very, very soon. This will be on our website, but it'll link you to our planner. It'll link you to the app. You can follow at the Agenda Period on Instagram. You can come see the mess I'm making on TikTok at Agenda Period, because we're talking some mad shit about perimenopause over there. So just come hang out with us, and everyone with a good attitude is welcome. So men are welcome, everyone's welcome. Just come learn, come hang out, and come know that your body is magical. There's nothing broken about having a menstrual cycle. It makes you really cool and unique and different than men in a way that is really powerful. So it's just time for us to like reclaim our cyclical badass selves, and we're trying to give you all the tools to do that over at the Agenda Period. So come hang out with us.
That's perfect. Alyx, thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for hosting this conversation.